Hello, hello, hello. We're back.
Hello.
Yours truly, King's Inner Court. My name is Best,
Mm-hmm. And my name is Jeremiah.
and today's topic is dating, engagement, and marriage.
Mm-hmm. How can we improve as men in each of these fields? Now, improving is kind of subjective, but we will talk about how men can slash should be in these situations with the backing and foundation using the word of God.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So obviously, both Jeremiah and I, we're still in the we haven't reached the individual haven't reached the engagement and marriage process, but we're gonna kind of
Mm-hmm.
talk about it more so from just more so,
Outside perspective.
yes, out like an outside perspective, so to speak, right? And but God willing, God will bring our wives, so we're gonna get into those phases soon by the grace of God.
Yes,
But
sir.
yeah, let's start off with the dating. The dating. So
Mm-hmm.
Jeremiah, let's hear it. What, in your opinion, as a man, how should we go about the dating process, the quote unquote dating process, I should say?
Yeah, for sure. So I will admit, or I guess it's not really an admission, but
Yeah.
I will say that I am currently single. But that does not mean that I don't have dating experience. I've had, you could say, successful dating experiences and unsuccessful ones. But obviously, there's been a lot of growth since then. Uh, to answer your question, best, how can we as men interact in the dating scene, like as we are dating? So I do have a belief that dating in and out of itself is not entirely biblical. However,
Yeah.
I wouldn't like frown upon it or like discourage it. I think that you can definitely court someone as you date. So when I say dating, you can kind of interpret that as dating or courtship. Or if I say courtship, you can interpret that as dating. So yeah, how can a man or how can men or like myself, for example, interact with my potential partner as I'm dating? A couple things or a lot of things come to mind, and the first thing that comes to mind is what what am I practicing, right?
Mm.
And what I mean by that is because the goal I would hope
Yeah.
for dating is to get married. And
Yes,
unfortunately
sir.
we live in a world where people date with no end goal, and that's unfortunate. But we are talking from a sense where you have an end goal, that being marriage.
Hmm.
Um so so yeah, in the dating field or tenure, I would say that is the perfect opportunity to practice being a husband.
Mm.
I have heard things on both sides of the man and the woman of like, until they're my wife or until they're my husband, I'm not gonna do X, Y, or Z things. But me personally, I disagree with that. I think that's the perfect time to actually start, because you don't just become a wife or a husband overnight. You
Yeah.
know, you don't just become a wife or a husband as soon as there's a ring on your finger.
Yeah.
When I read the book of Proverbs, for example, it talks about the characteristics of a husband and the characteristics of a wife. Both of them are in Proverbs. I know Proverbs 31 is big for women and who are wives or aiming, aspiring to be wives.
Yeah.
And I know there's an earlier chapter as well for husbands. But I guess in the dating field, I would say that's a perfect opportunity to practice those things. So,
Mm.
what are some of these things that could be practiced? I mean, there's so many things that we could talk about, but a couple things that come to mind is sacrifice. You
Mm.
know, it says, the Word of God says, husbands, like, lay down your lives for your wife,
Mm.
and then like wives, respect your husbands.
Mm.
But I'm gonna speak from the obviously from the man perspective in the dating aspect. Practicing sacrificial love, what that could look like, or rather, what that does look like, and it happens on both ends, to be honest, but it's putting the other person before yourself,
Mm.
putting their needs before you.
Mm.
Now, I am saying this about the man, but it's definitely applicable for the women too. But of course, this is a podcast for men, so I will tailor it to men specifically, or mostly rather.
Mm.
Um, but sacrificial love, putting your, in this case, girlfriend before yourself,
Mm.
Obviously, I won't say without boundaries or without wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
but that is a way to show love to another person is when you consider them more than you consider yourself. And I
Mm-hmm.
would hope that that is also reflected as well.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing is, I mean, I guess we kind of talk about like attributes, right? Best like patience and kindness and all that. But there's also a lot of self control, I believe, in this situation because hey man, if you're dating or courting with the goal to get married,
Yeah.
it's very easy to get excited,
Mm-hmm.
if y'all get my drift.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that self-control, though not easy at times, is something that definitely can be practiced in those situations.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's a biblical foundation and background, that supports that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also want to hear your thoughts, best. Like, as let me I won't speak for your situation, but what are your thoughts on how a man can interact with their girlfriends or someone they're courting?
Yeah, so I guess from my experience, so I am in a relationship, a happy relationship, and God willing, we will be engaged and married soon by the grace of God.
Amen, amen.
But yeah, I do agree. As far as the concept of dating, I'm with you on that. In my opinion, I think dating is honestly a modern day phenomenon. To be honest, a
Mm-hmm.
modern day idea,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that it's relatively modern, I would say. And I am of the belief of courtship,
Okay.
right? And I think as the man, it's on us to lead that courtship,
Okay.
right? It's on us to set the tone, so to speak. When I say set the tone, I don't mean in a domineering way, but to lead, to have that intention, to know where you're going, to have that vision, right? Not
Yeah.
just the vision for your life, but the vision for the relationship, right? As a like,
Agreed.
right, especially particularly the vision to marriage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that is the calling, right? Of we're called the calling of marriage, right? In the sense that you're not just dating for the sake of dating, right? You're not just
Mm-hmm.
dating for the sake of just we're gonna play boyfriend and girlfriend and all this stuff. You're dating,
Yeah.
right, to court, right? You're dating to lead to the end goal, which is ultimately marriage,
Yeah.
right? And I believe, and I think we seem to be in agreement on this. As the man, it's on you to lead in that sense, right? Make sure you
Mm-hmm.
either both are on the same page early on in the dating process. Make sure you both are aligned with that vision, and making sure you both are walking towards that vision, getting to know each other, um, getting to know each other, draw closer together, but most importantly, keeping God in the center, keeping
Yeah.
God in the center. And one thing actually is funny. I actually I've been doing a fast, and just based on my prayer and my Bible reading, I spoke to my girl about this too. You
Mm-hmm.
look at even the story of Adam and Eve, right? Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden,
Yeah.
and I believe that the Garden of Eden is the representation of being in the presence of God,
Yeah.
right? And they flourished while they were in the presence of God, right?
Mm-hmm.
The relationship flowed while they were within the presence of God, because God gave them the earth to have dominion over, right?
Yeah.
To multiply those resources, right? They had dominion over that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, and once they sinned, they disobeyed God, they ate the apple. They were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, and that essentially reflects being removed, not being in God's presence. That's when
Mm-hmm.
sin came, right? So I think within that sphere, Adam, as a leader, he was responsible for having dominion of dominion of the resources, right?
Yeah.
And that includes making sure that everything everything is well in the Garden of Eden, making sure that there's no serpent there to deceive Eve. And as man,
Mm-hmm.
we're called to be the coverage, right? Adam was not the cover. He was not able to provide that coverage for his wife, and as us, we're supposed to provide that coverage in the sense that pray over our wives, pray over our women, and pray over our
Mm-hmm.
families, right? And some might say, okay, in a relationship, technically you guys aren't married, right? But you don't have to wait till a marriage to do that, right?
Yeah.
It's important for us to do that now, you know, love, cherish, lead, and making sure you both are moving that right direction, right? And
Mm-hmm.
if it's at a point where you want marriage, but she might not want marriage, right? Then you have to kind of consider, is this the best? Should you consider moving forward with this, right? Based off
Mm-hmm.
it's not aligned with that vision that God has for us, which ultimately being marriage,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I like to hear what you think about that.
I actually want to ask you a couple
Yeah.
questions if you don't mind. So we kind of alluded to, or I guess I kind of alluded to, dating and courting, depending on the approach, are interchangeable.
Yeah.
However, I want to ask you, what are the main differences between dating and courting? Do you think?
That's a good question. In my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
I think courtship is I think courtship, and this is just from my understanding, I understand courtship as marriage focused, right?
Yeah.
That you're actually seeing each other for the purpose of marriage,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think it's more specific. I find dating, it's more broad in the sense that, okay, it can be marriage, but there could also be another goal to it. There's also other reasons behind dating, whether it is friends with benefits or Netflix and chill, or whatever situation shit, whatever it is that they call it, right? It's like
Calling these
I
days, yeah.
find, yeah, like I find that dating is a bit broad in the sense that it can mean many things, whereas
Mm-hmm.
courtship means one thing, which is marriage. That's what I
Yeah.
find, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What
No,
do you think?
I would definitely, I would agree with you there. I
Yeah.
see now. Yeah, no, yeah, I would agree with you there. I would say that courtship is definitely intentional. Does it always work out, or can it always work out? No, but I think if both parties are intentional about it, intentional in knowing or figuring out if it would work between them, or if it could work between them, whether it succeeds or does not succeed, I think that is very fine and okay.
Mm.
It's kind of, I guess let me not use like simile, but I can understand per that perspective. But yeah, I believe that courtship is very intentional. While dating, though it can be intentional, a lot of times, especially compared to courtship,
Mm.
is not entirely intentional. As you said, there's a lot of like testing of waters. I've heard a lot of analogies that are now so good.
Mm.
For example, you gotta test the car before you drive it.
Mm.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
that's to be honest, that's a very poor statement to
Yeah.
make.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Someone's the other person's not an object.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, I would agree with you that courtship is definitely intentional in learning and trying to figure out if that relationship is gonna work between the both of you.
Yeah.
While dating is kind of more open ended, though it varies. Like you said, like it's broad, so it is
Mm.
very broad.
Mm.
Um, which leads me to my next question. But or I guess you want to ask me something.
No. No.
What do you want
No.
to ask me?
That's. I agree. I agree. And I think that's the thing, right? Where I find with courtship, it's in marriage, and I think there's a respect. There's a mutual respect uh type. There's an aspect of mutual respect within it, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a man, you have to show love and respect to the woman you're courting, right? And I
Yeah.
think sometimes when you get to like that's how I think the issue with with dating, it's it's easy to not have that respect where it's like, okay, you're going just to, like, as you said, test the car, or so whatever it is that people say, right? But
Yeah.
really you're courting her, right? You're courting her, you're loving her, you're cherishing her, right? And you want to move towards having starting a life with this person,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that
Yeah.
that that should be the end goal of every relationship, in my opinion, right? And the goal of every
Should be.
relationship should ultimately lead the family, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So so my next question for you
yeah,
is what now I know this is for men, but
yeah.
what are some things to consider or to look out for as a man when you're courting a potential partner?
Okay, so number one, God, right? How
Mm-hmm.
what's a, like what's the relationship with God? When I say that, I don't just mean the churchgoer, right? I mean
Yeah.
an actual relationship with the Most High, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because end of the day, when you're gonna have a lot of issues, right? But ultimately, God should be the center. God should be the ground
Mm-hmm.
grounded. That should be the foundation of your marriage, right? And
Yeah.
if one of you, the Bible said, you cannot be unequally yoked, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're unequally yoked, right, that is a recipe for disaster, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is like the main thing. I think there's other things as well, of course, like healthy communication. Healthy
Yeah.
communication is very important, right? And I think one thing I find is like I know we're not perfect. All of us we have things we're working on, but I think just a willingness to improve, a willingness to grow,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I
I was
think
gonna
a
yeah.
relationship is all about helping each other grow, to
Mm-hmm.
grow, right? And it's if one person is stubborn, if one person is not willing to change or or have that self awareness to be willing to change something, that's going to be very difficult, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I know like something I'm thankful for in my relationship is that obviously we both have things that we're not perfect. We both have things that we're working on, but we're both willing to work on that for ourselves and for the betterment of our relationship, right? And I think that's
Yeah.
important for every relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, you said it in my opinion very well. Like the
yeah,
first thing is definitely God in the relationship. It reminds me of this video I saw on a platform, social media platform.
yeah.
Essentially, what this woman was saying that whenever her and her husband have arguments, the first thing that her husband would do will be like, even if they're like in separate rooms or like just kind of away from each other, the first thing that the husband usually does is to call over his wife and says, like, let's pray together,
Mm,
because at least as they're explaining it, they're essentially saying that when they come together and bring it before God, it will be known to the both of them where either one person went wrong or both parties go wrong. But it
mm,
is not with the intention to point out wrongs, but rather to communicate healthily and to absolve the problem at hand
mm,
in the most wise way.
mm,
So when I do get married by the grace of God,
yeah,
that is something that I would like to practice.
mm,
Um, and another thing that you said that I think that I believe is also very key is willingness. At least when I think of it, like when you're first approaching, like as a man, if you're first approaching a woman with the intention of courtship, I believe there needs to be willingness on both sides.
mm,
Now, I understand the world that we live in. On the both sides, there can be skepticism.
mm,
Um, but that's why number one is important to have a relationship with God so that God can help you to decipher or determine if this potential person could be someone for you.
mm,
And then number two is a testing of character, so to speak. Like trying to at least putting in the efforts to see if this individual could be for you or not.
mm.
So those are just my thoughts there. I do have other questions, but do you have anything else that's
Yeah,
on?
yeah, yeah. And I think that's and it's interesting because it ultimately comes down to like the commandments of God too, right? Is what are the key commandments? Love the Lord that God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
I always say this, right? That any healthy relationship, I think and this is the issue I find with modern day dating, is a lot of times I think we focus on what can we get out of it, right? I'm
Yeah.
not getting what I want, so I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna off this person. I'm gonna walk away, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a true healthy relationship is what can both parties do for one another? What
Mm-hmm.
can both parties? do to best serve and love one another, right? And
Yeah,
I think if both parties focus on that, that can help any relationship push. My in my opinion, that's what I
agreed.
believe. Yeah.
No, I agree. I think if both parties do their best to put each other first, you will still have like your disagreements, you'll still have your arguments, but I would like to think and believe, and also partially seen, that those type of relationships tend to work out a lot better.
Mm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. So you will you do you have another yet another question? I think you had another question you could ask.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, okay, so what are, like, as a man is courting their potential partner, right?
Mm.
This is a common question that is asked. Do you believe in a time frame, and if you do or don't, what is a respectable time frame for courtship? This is under the assumption that the potential partner is also interested, but as you provide that answer, also I'm curious, I'm a little curious, like, what is your answer if the potential partner is not interested as well?
So when you say time frame, you mean time frame in terms of like when to get married,
Yeah, when to propose
when to
and get
propose?
engaged and get married. So I say when to propose specifically.
Yeah. See, I mean, I guess it's a case by case basis. I think it's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
factors to consider based off of age, based off of different experiences. I'm actually of the belief, and I don't know. Some people might not. I don't know if everyone will. Some people might not agree, but I'm actually of the opinion that
Mm-hmm.
by I think, especially when you get to a certain point in your life, I think by a year you should know if you want to marry this person or not. In my opinion. In my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think by a year, like you should know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Max 2 years, depending on where you're at age wise and whatnot. Max two
Yeah.
years. But I think after that, if you're still not sure, then you might want to. If you're still not sure, and so if you're still not sure, they tell me two things, right? It's either A, you might not have done enough to really, I want to say vet is the right word, but more so like, yeah, I'll say vet, just kind of understanding is this is the right decision long term, or
Yeah.
B, you might know deep down that maybe you just might not, this just might not be the right one,
Yeah.
right? So again, I think it's a case by case basis, but I of the opinion that generally, I think after a year, you should know. You should know, assuming like both of you are putting it before God and taking the right steps. I think by a
Mm-hmm.
year, generally you should know. That's what I believe.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm on similar thought process there. I do believe, obviously there's many factors to it,
yeah,
like, finances and all
yeah,
that,
yeah. Of
but
course.
I guess my two major comments to that is, I also share the same opinion
Hmm.
that a year is a respectable time.
Yeah.
I think now the reason why I say that is, like, obviously this from what I've heard,
Yes.
and also, like, I would assume this is also true, that once you get married, obviously the relationship changes and life changes, and this you really start to learn about the person within the marriage aspect after you get married.
Hmm.
That's what I've heard, and
Yeah.
I would also agree that that is true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, I don't have that experience on my own, but I do think a year is a respectable time frame to get to know, especially if you're intentional to
Mm,
get to know the person as much as you can,
mm,
both the good and the bad. And everyone has bad, so, like, you can't find a perfect person.
mm.
And then number two that I wanted to say is, which I'm drawing a blank here, but yeah, I guess number two, what I want to say is, as you are courting this person, if they are not, this is my own opinion anyways, but if the person you're potentially trying to court is, like, not showing interest,
Yeah.
if actually let me say both sides, if the person you're trying to court is not showing interest, or you yourself after like let's say a year, just I'm just giving a time frame, but it doesn't have to be a year. But like let's say after a year, you're not entirely sure. I would say in that situation to take a step back. Um, First, I'll address if the other person is not entirely interested. I don't think you would want to waste your time.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
if they're not entirely sure, I just don't think you want to waste your time.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna say something like, "Oh, plenty of fish in the sea,"
yeah.
but I do think it might be time to consider other prospects. I'm not saying drop that person entirely, but just consider other prospects if they're not entirely willing to see if the relationship could work.
Yeah.
Um, and then now, if you're the man and you are courting or dating someone,
Yeah.
again, this is my own opinion.
Yeah.
And if you're not entirely sure, I would also suggest to take a step back because you don't want to waste their time.
Exactly.
Um, like I'm not here to judge anyone, obviously, but I have heard of like situations where, like after like 3 5 years, the guy's like dating his potential partner, and they're still unsure, and it's like, like
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you've been unsure for the last 2 years, you probably
Yeah.
could have stepped back 2 years ago and allowed them to figure things out for themselves, and you figure
Yeah.
out your thing for yourself. Um, One final thing I do want to say concerning that is like obviously there's multiple layers to it. Like there's finances and there's just other things. What I could say to that as someone who is not currently dating but has the experience and obviously not engaged or married ever yet, is if you are intentional about building a life and a legacy with this person,
Mm.
um, I would assume that one would try their best to put other areas in their life kind of in place as well.
Mm.
Because not only are you potentially marrying a person, but you're also joining your life with them.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, that's just kind of my final take
Okay,
on that
okay,
specifically.
okay, okay. No, no, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, I agree. I think there should be a sense of, I'm not necessarily saying that like, okay, everything needs to be perfect, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
I think there should be a set. And by the way, I'm just speaking. This is my opinion, right? At this point, like I think there should be a sense of, okay, am I willing to do life with this person by this point, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I also think a big part of it as well is even before getting into the relationship, having that sense of vision, purpose. Like,
Yeah.
what's the purpose of this, right? I think sometimes it's easy for people to get into a relationship without even really understanding the purpose. Get into it for the sake of getting into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we want to make a decision not just solely based off our emotions or you fell in love with this person, but making the decision to honor God, right? Yeah, because
Yeah.
you love this person, that's a big part. You love this person, you cherish this person, but also to honor God throughout that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that you could say the same thing with engagement, right? Like obviously, technically, engagement, you're not married yet, right? So technically, you're still kind of considered single until you're married, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's ultimately that courtship process, like moving toward the direction until marriage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think you will still continue to move toward the direction, even though you're after marriage, but it could be something else, whether it's the flourishment of your family, your relationship, with your kids, things of that nature, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think I'm trying to phrase this question properly, but do you think how you treat your poten- potential partner or partner differs from courting versus engaged versus marriage? Other than like status, do you think how you interact or treat them, or yeah, how you interact or treat them, do you think it differs between each stage?
Do you think how you interact with differs with your courtship versus marriage?
Yeah, like how you treat your potential
Like,
partner,
in what
or
sense?
like for example, we were talking about like you mentioned being the leader, leading that. Do you think that approach differs from like dating or versus courting/dating versus engaged versus marriage or
Hmm.
married?
Um, I think it could. I think so. Actually, you know what? Not necessarily. Like yes and no. I'll say no
Mm-hmm.
because I'm also of the belief that I'm leaning towards no in the sense that I'm always of the belief that courtship should never stop. And I'm also of the belief that even after you get married or after you've been together for so many years, as much as possible, and get life gets in the way, I get it, but as much as possible, we
Mm-hmm.
should try to continue to court our wives the same way we
Mm-hmm.
courted our wives when we were married. I think the problem is sometimes you're married, you've been together for so long, you start getting complacent, you start not doing the things that you did before in the courtship
Mm-hmm.
process when you fell in love, right? And you don't want to stop doing those things because now you're married, you have kids, you want to continue to do those things, you want to bring the best out of each other, you want to look good for one each other, you want to have date nights, you want to do your best to look good for one another, you want to do your best to love and cherish one another, right? I think all these things
Mm-hmm.
should be continued even after you're married for donkey years, you know? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What do you
Yeah.
think?
I was actually gonna say, like myself personally, I would say that like overall, no, it wouldn't change,
Mm,
because if the intention is to build family, legacy, and a life together, I would assume that wouldn't change between stages. Obviously, the status changes, and then all obviously like the life life itself
yeah,
changes,
yeah.
but how you interact with like your partner, I don't think would change much,
Mm,
because the goal is still the same,
mm,
to build family, build legacy, as you said, like continuous courtship to your wife.
mm.
I wanted to ask you one further question. How much? I guess I'm trying to ask a
Yeah.
question without answering it myself. But I guess what I want to say, and I want to let me just say my statement first, and I want to get your thoughts afterwards. So, when I read the Word of God, it says, like man, like lay down your lives for your
Mm,
wife,
mm,
right? And like wives, respect your husband. But it talks a lot about sacrificial love in that
yeah.
passage and putting your wife before you. Um, my thought is that this would start mostly in the engaged phase, but something that you would practice even in the courtship phase,
Yeah.
because like I said, things don't just turn overnight. But I would say that it would start in the engagement phase, because I guess the reason why I think that, and I'd like to hear your thoughts best, is because if you are courting a person, I still would encourage, putting them before you. Like that's essentially what Christ has called us to do, anyways.
Mm,
Even outside the relationship.
mm,
But I would agree that you put them before you, but I don't know if you would do that. You would go to the lengths for that person if they're not officially bound to you yet.
mm.
And the only reason why I would say that is because if in the case that both parties determine that it doesn't really work
Yeah.
out. But like what are your thoughts on that?
See, I see what you're saying, and I guess in the sense that like I guess that's the one thing with the quote dating process is that
Mm-hmm.
I'll say yes, you still should court and make sure that you both are on the same page, and then from there decide like, hey, is it the right decision to move things forward or not, right? And now, of course, you want to. I get where you're coming from, but I think how I kind of see it in terms of like, should you give that to your person you're dating, um, as you would to the person you're engaged with, right? I think how I see it is it's not the action itself, but the action is the reflection of who we're called to be as men and as
Mm-hmm.
specifically as men, as godly men specifically,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
right? That's how I
I
see
see
it.
where you're
Yeah,
coming from.
because and I think the relationship with Christ and the church, right? Christ died for the church, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yes, the action was critical, but it wasn't just the action, but the action was a reflection of the character, a reflection of the person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're called as believers to be more Christ-like. You get me?
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
believe we're called to be more Christ-like. As we're more Christ-like, we're going to and it says too, right? About like love, love covers all the commandments, right?
Mm-hmm.
Loving God and loving others, that covers all the commandments. And there's no better
Mm-hmm.
example of love than Christ, right? And if we exude that, and if that is ingrained in who we are, we allow Christ, this Holy Spirit, to work through us and to flow through us
Mm-hmm.
by second nature. That's what we're going to do, right? So even if and of course it doesn't mean now it doesn't mean of course like yes if you're dating somebody you realize the other person like your person you're dating um is not on the same wavelength doesn't mean okay you should pursue things any further. If you see that, then okay, you have to maybe reconsider if you should continue on with this, right?
Yeah.
But I think that shouldn't impact who you are as a person or the things that you do, especially if it reflects your own values and your integrity. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I actually appreciate you for bringing that
Yeah.
up because like as you were mentioning that and like I agree with that and now that you've like said that, it did remind me of it reminded me exactly of how Christ treated the church
Mm,
even
yeah.
before because it talks about how the church is the bride and Christ is Jesus Christ is the
Mm,
groom. So with that analogy, as when Christ returns, they be joined together.
mm,
But then when I consider how Christ treated the church even before that, he still washed his disciples'
yeah.
feet. He still put others
Yeah.
before them. So even just reflecting that, so I appreciate you for bringing that up, Bess, because now that like if we're to reflect that in the courtship phase, you would still do that because it's a test of your character
Exactly.
rather than like okay, rather than like it's not necessarily even for them quote unquote though it's for them it's not necessarily for them quote unquote it's more so of you reflecting Christ within you like it's a reflection of your own character
Exactly.
so
Exactly.
I can agree with that
Exactly.
that's
Yeah,
that's a good one
and
that's a
we
good one.
want to be careful. I think especially as men because we're called to lead and set the tone. We want to
Mm-hmm.
be careful of not giving certain things to people um and one like certain things this thing for somebody but not for this person because we're not we're gonna what we won't do it for a person we're dating or a person we're seeing, right? But we're gonna do it first but we will do it when we're married, right? Now of course it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean now like obviously again there's also some things there are differences in that aspect like there's certain things you can do in the confines of a marriage, right?
Yeah.
That you can do outside of that, right? So obviously
Mm-hmm.
like that doesn't nullify that, but I think what
Yeah.
I'm saying is that we shouldn't get we have to be careful not to discriminate in the sense that we can't say that okay if that's who we are as if that's who we are, especially if we have that ingrained with us, right? Particularly the principles of the script of the Bible of Christ, right?
Mm-hmm.
We should be able to do that for everybody, right? Or in the
Yeah.
Bible, it says that, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, where it says that how can you can't say you love you hate your enemies, right? You only do good things for the people you love, right?
Yeah.
Because every anybody can do that, right? What
Mm-hmm.
truly differentiates a believer is you show love to everyone, including your enemies,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's a
Correct.
great example because like we can like everybody like nowadays you see like some like a lot of these movements, so-called movements, are saying
Mm-hmm.
that oh, this person has to prove their point, right? And I see it in both sides, right? This person has to prove their point, has to has to win me over. Like I'll prove their point before I can give them this, right? But it's
Yeah.
like you're restricting it. You're basically restricting your love from that person if they can if as long as they fulfill a certain need. So I bet that begs the
Mm-hmm.
question: is that really love? Is that
Yeah.
really love? Because that contradicts the whole concept of love, right? But what
Yeah.
true love is, you still give to this person, right? And even if the possibility of this not working out, you still give to this person what you can give within your capacity,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think
Yeah.
that's the key we have to look at.
Yeah. I agree with that. Do you have any other comments or questions for us?
Yeah, no, I think this is a good conversation, and I know I think in terms of the marriage aspect of things, we did touch up on it a bit in terms of like what as men to call it for marriage. And again, we're not
Mm-hmm.
married yet, so take what we say with a grain of salt. But I
Mm-hmm.
think ultimately, yeah, I believe that as men, we're called to bring direction, right? I mean, most importantly, be submitted to Christ, be submitted to God, right? Submit to the Most High, and provide that direction for our wives and for our families, right? Particularly for
Yeah.
like in the relation with our wives, right? We have to bring that direction, that call, and that ultimately starts off with us being submitted to God, submitted to the Most High,
Mm-hmm.
right? As long as we're submitted to
Yeah.
the Most High, then God will bring that provision. God will work through that marriage and bring that vision,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. We might explore leadership, the topic or the concept of it, in like a much lengthier
Yeah,
detail another time. That's something that we'll
yeah,
consider.
yeah,
Obviously, we have spoken about it in different
yeah.
episodes, like in different parts. But yeah, we've spoken a lot about courtship, not as much for engagements or married.
Yeah.
That being said, there are some things that are applicable from the courtship aspects to engagement and marriage, though take it with a grain of salt. And of course, and obviously, um, whenever the opportunity arises, we will look into getting people who are experienced in those other two aspects to talk on this. Or by the grace of God, if one or both of us does get engaged or
Yes, sir.
married, we can bring our own experiences to
Yes,
this as
sir.
well.
Yes, sir.
So I believe that's everything for today. I hope you guys found this to be insightful and thought provoking. If you do have any questions or comments, drop them in the comment section below. We would like to hear them. We do look at the comments and we will respond to the comments. So yeah, hopefully you found this insightful. Once again, this is King's Inner Court. I am one of your hosts for today, Jeremiah,
Best.
and I hope you all have a blessed week. Take care.
Take care, guys. Peace.